right, welcome to episode 2. I'm your host, Derek Ramdean Singh, and you're listening to the Calypso and Real Estate Podcast, where we chat about real estate, business, leadership, and everything in between. In today's episode, I get to sit down with my friend and mentor, Tyler Pollock, the sales manager at Pacesetter Homes. With a career spanning 2 decades in real estate, Tyler has been able to help over 1,200 families purchase their dream home in Edmonton and Fort MacMurray. In this episode, he shares his thoughts on what it takes to have longevity in a dynamic real estate industry, some insights on investing and day trading, and predictions of what innovation in a post-COVID world will look like. It was great to chat with one of the best minds in our industry. I'm excited to share our conversation with you. Here we go. As you've been in the industry so long, I got to ask, how did you get started in real estate?
It was just out of necessity that I kind of just jumped right into it. It was my whole family was in real estate for a while before I even came across it that way, right? My mom and my dad were both realtors in Saskatchewan. My mom became a realtor here. My father worked for New Home Sales with Road Communities for a bit. And my mom was also working in new home sales after a stint of being a realtor as well. And me just getting out of high school, right? I jumped kind of from a few jobs, kind of feeling things out, right? Worked very hard and laborious out on Manderley sod, piling sod, right? So I did some framing, some plumbing prior to that, and went through a rough patch in my life. And when I came back to Edmonton, my dad said he needed some help out at the show home. I got hired on as a contractor directly with him, right? And started working in his show home, which was with Road Communities at the time, and fell in love with it, right? And fell in love with dealing with people and seeing the smiles on their faces when we were able to provide them possession or get them the house they wanted, different things like that. And just fell in love with it. And obviously it was kind of right for me. The owner of the company, Radhi Gupta, at that point in time came out to the show home about 6 months later after I started working there, and offered me a job on the spot and said, why don't you start working for us as an employee? And yeah, then just kind of took off from there.
And that's how the story started, eh?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a very unromantic story to begin with. Like I said, it was out of necessity, just needing money at the time, but just walked into something I fell in love with, right? And just continued down that path and really never looked back once I started, right? So it was really good. And 17 years later, I'm still doing it. So.
And if I do say so myself, you're doing it pretty well.
Yeah, I had not a bad career out on the field, sure, right? I started off in Sherwood Park doing some adult bungalows, Silver Oaks. I'll never forget that name, Silver Oaks. It was a great experience. They were customized bungalows. Each one was kind of a separate individual beast unto itself. I remember I had my very first deal that I took on from my dad completely by myself. I was still really young, 21, 22 at the time. And I had 39 change orders with that deal. And each change order had like 10 to 15 different items on it. And these are like 1,400 square foot bungalows, right? You ask, like, how much can you possibly change in 1,400 square foot? Well, let me tell you, a lot. But going over to Terwillegar Town after that, I was assistant during this whole time. Terwillegar Town, this was right in the boom, right? That 2004, 2006. People, we didn't even have a show home. There was a trailer basically parked on empty dirt, and there was just people, groves of people just lining up beside the trailer, right? You'd invite them in, you'd say, which one would you like? Here's the prices, pick out of these 4 color options, done deal, go in, you send them to either office A or office B to write the contract, and that's it. They're done, right? Your selling process was about 10 to 15 minutes long, right? And that was it. So, and then Rohit offered me the opportunity to become an ASM, area sales manager. And that was in Fort MacMurray, though. So to become an ASM, I had to move to Fort MacMurray. So it was very interesting. I was extremely nervous, still very young at that point in time. And I thought to myself, hey, if I'm going to do it, I might as well just go out there and do it. Brought me up to Fort MacMurray, met the team up there. It was a great vibe going on. Went up to Fort MacMurray, and yeah, then we were talking anywhere from 80 to 156 deals per year, which was my biggest year, 156 deals in 1 year. It was full-time work. I mean, you're talking 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for like 6 months straight. But it was great. I was young. I loved what I was doing. Obviously, the compensation was there, right? I mean, we all do what we do, but we love it even more for the compensation, right?
I like to say it's love at first contract.
Love at first paycheck. That's the famous line, right? When you talk about salespeople, you're only as good as your last deal, right? So I just made sure I never had a last deal. And then I was up there for a little over a decade, right?
Wow.
So, but it was a fantastic town. Probably got myself into a little bit too much trouble, right? Fort MacMurray, young kid making lots of money. Not all the right combinations there.
Some people say trouble, some people say fun.
Yeah. It's that line when fun goes and then just crosses that needle, right? But it was a great time, right? I'll never give it up. It was a huge learning experience for me. Ups and downs, right? We had some booms. I mean, I remember the first 3 years I was there, the prices of the homes were going up like $100,000 a year, right? But
That's
then
incredible.
it was just nuts, right? Like every time I sold a house, I was increasing prices by $5,000 or $15,000, right? It was nuts, right? The market was crazy. The economy was great. Oil was going up to that $150 a barrel, all that good stuff. So it was just a perfect storm, right? So, but then the worldwide financial crisis hit, and I didn't have anybody come through my show home for 6 months. So you take the good with your bad, and then, to kind of end off my career in Fort MacMurray, I was on my way back down and transitioning down to Edmonton to Cybecker. And then the unfortunate fact of the wildfires happened in Fort MacMurray. And I went back up as part of the rebuild program with Rohit Communities that way, where we were going to rebuild people's houses for them that way. And that was very interesting. It was a completely different atmosphere than I've ever had to deal with in your regular selling homes or atmosphere in the show home selling to clients that way. Yes, they would pick you as the builder and so on and so forth. But from that point, you would then take over with the insurance company, and you're basically dealing with the insurance company as far as the sale was concerned. So it was quite a different avenue, but again, another learning experience, right? So,
and would it be fair to say, like, especially with the Fort MacMurray rebuilds, that, there's a lot of excitement and emotion in purchasing a house, but that's probably elevated a lot more on the emotional side when you're talking about a house that you once had and now it's gone, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head for sure. I mean, when you talk about a regular home purchase, right, it's the biggest purchase anybody will ever make in their lifetime, right? This is their nest egg, right? The safety and security of their family, however you want to call it. It's just a lot of emotions tied up in that. But dealing with the customers that we had to rebuild their houses for after the fire was another beast in itself. I mean, they were bringing in emotions from losing their previous home, not just their home, all of their memories, right? You're talking about photos and pictures and everything else that makes a house a home, right? And they're bringing that forward to you to try and explain and still move forward with life, but that gets wrapped up in the back end, right? And then they're trying to illustrate to you what they want in their new home and what their old home used to be, and then emotions tying up that way. And it's just whether it be good or bad, really brought out the emotions with those people, rightfully so, though. I mean, I couldn't even imagine what these people have gone through, right? Losing everything. I mean, I know I had a couple that had lived in their house for 35 years, built it from brand new scratch, right? When Fort MacMurray wasn't Fort MacMurray, it was just a gravel road going through a couple of houses, right? But they were there and they lost everything after 35 years. And now they're trying to piece their life back together, living in a rental accommodation in Fort MacMurray, nonetheless, right? So difficult times for sure for a lot of people up there. And again, they got hit by floods now and stuff like that. So yeah, my heart goes out to Fort MacMurray. It gave me a decade of my life, which I'll never regret. I look at it as a fantastic experience. And I got to tell you, the people up there are just amazing, right? They're just so willing to help, right?
Band together and
exactly. Great community, right? But again, getting back to the main topic, yes, it was quite the experience, lots of emotions, good or bad or otherwise that way. So glad it's over, glad everybody's moved back in, and I probably won't go down that road again, even if I'm asked to.
Fair enough. But I think also to that point, as someone who's helping someone purchase a home or rebuild a home in that case, right? We take a big, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but we play a major role in that, helping that person achieve that goal.
Yes.
Right. And especially when you're dealing with, like we said, a very emotional situation, you've lost your home, you've lost all your belongings. One thing I've really admired about your handling of those situations is you've always had a smile on your face and you've always brought, a positive energy, even if it is a difficult situation. And so where does that philosophy come from? How does your approach to working with clients come from? Because I'm sure there are days that, it's overwhelming and it's not easy to crack that smile, right?
No, first of all, thank you for that. And secondly, yes, I mean, I guess I would have to start from the root, which is my philosophy on life is you only have one day to live each day, so you might as well live it well, right?
Cheers to that.
yes,
Cheers to
yes,
that.
I couldn't agree more. But it's, I want to be happy every single day, and I want to try and make people happy every single day, and it's doing right by people, right? I think that's the biggest thing. There's always problems that come up in life, right? And sometimes they can be major problems, sometimes they can be small problems, but it's through creative solution finding that you will have a happy client at the end of the day, right? And whether I'm presenting bad news or horrible news or good news, I'm going to have a smile on my face because I owe that to that client, right? This is my job. This isn't their job. They're about purchasing a product from me. I owe it to them to be happy, well presented. And that's just who I am. That's just the way I feel, right? And again, I enjoy what I'm doing. And if you're able to find a creative solution for whatever problem may arise in the sales industry, whether you're selling cars or homes or whatever it may be, the client will be happy with you inherently because you tried, right? Again, my belief is nothing's ever too bad, right? I always have to take us in Canada, especially, and with I'll say it this way, the overabundance of everything that we have. And I always have to remind myself of those third world countries, right? Where,
they're not so lucky.
Yeah, well, and I mean, where the garage heater in your garage gets installed on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, they don't have that choice, right? They don't even have a choice of a garage. They don't have a choice of a home, right? So I've always got to take that back, right? At the end of the day, it's still a mistake and we still got to get it corrected to the best of our ability. But to beat ourselves up, myself or the client, over something like that, in my opinion, just isn't a way to live, right? We've always got to remember that even though problems arise there's always someone else out there worse off than we are, right? And I think if we all kept that in mind, I think the world would be a little better place altogether. So,
Yeah.
um, and I've got a lot to be happy for, right?
Yeah.
I've got a beautiful family. I've had a great career, and even in my younger life, I've gone through some really rough times.
Mhm.
I had some issues with substance abuse that way. I've lived on the streets of Edmonton for a couple of years. But through all of that, it was a growing experience for myself. I look back at that time now and say, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through that, right? Lucky enough for me, I did have love and family support in my life, and friends that way to be able to pull me out of those times, right? Which I think are such huge key issues today, right? Is that support mechanism for people that don't necessarily have it, and keep going around in that revolving circle that they get stuck in, right? So we could all be a little bit better and allow for some support where support needs to be too, right? So, but anyways, at the end of the day, just being happy overall it's just the way I live my life, right? Like I mentioned earlier, it's there's no use getting mad. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't keep a smile on your face 24/7, 365 for your entire life. There's days I've got two little rugrats upstairs. They get a little frustrating every once in a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody has their moments, but for the most part, I like to consider myself a happy, optimistic person that can overcome challenges with creative solution making, right? So it's done me well so far.
Having worked with you for almost, what was it, 2 years?
2 years too long.
But no matter what came our way, there was always that, like, let's see what we can do. There was you never dismissed everything. For those of you that know you, you walked around with a little notebook with every little thing that came up. And regardless of how big or how small that was, in the grand scheme of things, they were always addressed. And it was always, you never minimize that. And I think that's huge in connecting with different groups of people and understanding different cultures and needs for clients and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that you were really able to make those connections with clients, that they wanted to trust you with purchasing a home and trust our team in general.
Yeah, no, and I think you nailed it on the head there again, with the, right. I mean, people want to trust someone that they are making the largest purchase of their life with, right? You want to build rapport, but they want to be able to trust you, right? At the end of the day, that's kind of a key underlying thing. I mean, I've seen people purchase homes from me and our company, even though they truly weren't looking for our product, because they just felt that I was the right person to buy from, right? And as you mentioned, it's nothing's ever too small or too large, right? They're all on equal playing fields. And I always want to get an answer for everything, right? Even if my answer going back to a client or to a colleague or to a business related partner is the hard no, I want to give them the why, right? This is why it's a no, right? I want to explain it to them. I want to be able to give them answers. I don't want to just go back to them and give them a no. I want to go back to them and let them know, you know what, we tried option A, we tried option B, and we tried option C. This is why A didn't work. This is why B didn't work. This is why C didn't work. So unfortunately, we're left with the position that we are in today, right? And I feel that if you sit down and you talk to someone, right, they get a lot more out of that than a quick email that's no, sorry, we can't do that, or a text message, sorry, there's nothing going on, right? If you give people the answer to their true underlying question, the answer why, they get so much more satisfaction out of that, right? And you know better than anybody, I always used to say, right, when we're talking with clients, we want to ask why 5 times to get down to the true root of what they're actually looking at doing, right? And then another line that's very hard to get across in the show home, but it's, what's the pain with your current living circumstances, right? Because if you figure out a person's pain, you may not be able to resolve it, right? But you can explain to them why you aren't able to resolve it. And then that will be satisfaction for them in itself, right? And then right there, you're building rapport and trust again with the client, right? So I'm not going to sit here and preach to be a sales guru or anything, because I'm not, right? Sales in general, whether it be new home sales, car sales, retail sales, whatever it be, there's no U of A class. You can't go to NAIT and take a course, right? There's a lot of literature on it. There's a lot of DVDs and blogs and all that good stuff, but there's no fine-tuned way of, this is how you need to sell, right? And I think if there were, those particular types of salespeople actually wouldn't be able to do a good job, right? Because inherently in itself, sales needs to be organic. It needs to live within you, and it needs to be, there's certain tactics and skills and questions that you need to ask, but they have to come from a personal place, right? They have to come with your own flavor on it. Otherwise, you're not being true to that client. You're not building that rapport. And in the end, you won't gain that trust from the client, because they know you're just trying to be a mannequin there, blurping out whatever someone else has already told you to say, right?
That's so true. Like, I've always, in my time as an area sales manager and as a sales associate, I always took the approach of, I'm not a salesperson. That's not really my background. My background is, I went to university for 5 years. I studied in real estate. And I think the biggest way I was able to relate with clients is just by being myself, not trying to be a salesperson and push something down their throat, but do a lot of active listening, like find out, like you said, what's going on here. And by providing that guidance to them and saying something that actually clicks with them, they were like, hey, you're actually listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about. I think one of the greatest examples of that is, a lot of times we had clients that were looking for a walkout, let's say, and they wanted to do a legal basement suite. And you always brought up the idea like, hey, are these wants, do they fit together? A walkout is a beautiful space to have. It's a really nice lot. A legal basement suite is a great option for someone who's looking to maybe get a little bit more return on their investment, right? But do you want to have renters renting out your basement when you bought this beautiful lot to enjoy with your family, right? And I think that's something that hit a lot of people, because they hadn't had anyone ask that question to them and pose it to them, and made them kind of rethink, okay, what am I really valuing here? Am I valuing the beautiful lot, or is it more important for me to have that return on investment, right?
Exactly, right. And like you said, it's by going through those whys, right? Active listening. That's such a huge thing that's missing, I would say, out of the world today. We've lost the ability to listen to people, to truly sit down and listen to what someone's saying without thinking about and putting our phones away and everything else, and not have a million things, but actually focus on them and what they're saying. I've witnessed a lot of salespeople and a lot of my assistants, not included, come through the show home and be so concentrated on making it to that next step up the sales ladder that they aren't listening to the clients. And by the second or third rung, they look up and they realize there's no more ladder left, because they haven't been able to acquire the proper information to move that conversation forward, right? The client's given it to them, but they haven't attained it themselves to be able to know where that conversation is leading to next. And it's the inherent world we live in today, that we lose a lot of that active listening skill. So it is something that needs to be trained. It is something that needs to be taught now, right? And it takes a certain person to be able to do that with a client, and to be able to truly find their needs, and implement an action plan to be able to fill those needs for them, right? So I agree with you completely. That's probably one of the biggest things missing out on the sales field today, is the active listening skills, because we're all so eager to move to that next step, right? And close that deal. Yeah. So it's the nature of the beast, but I find salespeople would be closing more deals if they did have that ability, right? So.
No, I totally agree, and you can attest to this. I've had clients where we've worked together for over a year, and just because I am taking this person at face value and listening to their needs, and even providing some coaching from knowledge that I've had, I've been able to say that, hey, you know what, I met this person a year ago. We were able to coach them, and I remember there was an instance of a client that was using a credit card to save their down payment, which, for those of you that don't know, is not the best method to get there. And ultimately, 12 months later, when that person has now been given the proper information and the proper methodology for maybe achieving their goal, they came back to me, and we were able to help them achieve their new home goal. And I mean, for you, as someone who's helped, what is it, 1,200 families?
Yeah, just a little over 1,200 families now. So
1,200 families. I think you told me in your highest year you sold, what was it, 156?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really refreshing to hear you say that there's no rule book. There is no quick way to do it. It kind of starts with, like you said, things like active listening. And, maybe are there any other kind of insights, or I don't really want to say tips, but maybe advice that you would give to someone to be able to connect with people in this way?
I think along with active listening, it kind of runs congruent to that, because people, again, just moving too quickly, like you just mentioned. It's a great story, and I've seen you do this, which is fantastic. You take that client, give that a little iron. Yeah. You want to help people, right? That's truly what we're doing. Again, car sales, new home. I'm going to say that, right? Sales isn't just selling a product. It's sales in general, regardless of the product. Yes, you need to know your product to be able to handle the sale. But sales is sales, right? And you moving too quickly through those questions, not listening, not that active listening. You took the time to active listen. But what that brought you to is to a client that wants to purchase a house. The want is there, the need is there, right? When you have a client like that, a lot of people, they look at it and they're like, oh God, no, there's way too much going on here, too much debt, too much all this. And they're like, next, right? No, right? If you build that pipeline, which that's exactly what you were doing, you got these clients, you've got good clients that you're working with and you're selling houses to immediately, but you've got these clients that have the need, right? And they don't have the ability to do it right now. You're teaching them, you're getting them in touch with the right personnel to be able to guide them through that process to get to a position where they can purchase a house. Now you're building your backup pipeline, right? So even in a slow year, because we know the Edmonton market, up, down, up, down, up, down, all over the place.
It's a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah. But you're building your pipeline for the future. So it's, don't dismiss those people. Don't judge a book by its cover, I guess, is the true lesson here, right? And take them, get them geared up, get them going down the right path. You don't need to handhold them all the way down that path, because that's just not feasible. You just got to show them the light, show them the direction, give them the right people that'll guide them there, whether it be a financial planner or a really good mortgage specialist or, a debt consolidation company, whatever it may be. Get them in touch with the right people. They'll take them on the rest of the journey. Guess what? you don't even need to follow up with them because they are coming back to you because you now just fixed their life, right? They're going to search you out. How many times did I have people from Fort MacMurray calling down to Edmonton, see where I was, see what I was still doing, right? Because they're wondering, looking at houses in Edmonton now, right?
Yeah, we need a little tracker for you. Like, yeah, he's coming around the bend.
Yeah, he's coming, he'll be
Like,
here in 5.
where is he? Where's Tyler? We need Tyler.
Yeah, the good old days of being out in the field.
It's not often that you meet someone that's been able to be in sales, and especially real estate sales, for, a period of nearly 20 years at this point, right?
It's been a while.
It's definitely been a while, and
Have a drink for that.
Yeah, I'll join you with that. And what do you think are the recipes for success? Maybe this is probably maybe geared to someone who's, like myself. I've been in real estate sales for 3 years, looking to continue to do that. And what's some advice you'd give me to keep on keeping on, for lack of a better word?
Again, keep a positive attitude. Realize and expect that you're going to have bad days, right? But you're going to go to sleep that night and you're going to wake up the next morning and it's going to be a new day, right? That would be one. Don't procrastinate, right? Bad news is bad news. It doesn't matter how much time you take to give that news, it's still going to be bad news. And I can tell you right now, the more time you take to tell whoever, whether it be your company or the client or your wife or your kids or whatever it may be, it's only going to get worse as time goes on. So just rip off the Band-Aid and get it done, right? When it comes to my actual career, I would have to say there's no substitution for hard work, right? Like I mentioned, when I became an ASM for the first time and moved out to Fort MacMurray, I was working 12 hours days all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I strongly believe in work-life balance now that I have a family and I'm not a single guy anymore. But time in equals dollars earned, right? There's no question about that. There's no substitution for that. And there's no way around it. In sales, time in equals dollars earned. The more time you spend at the office working on what you're supposed to be doing, whether you're generating leads, whether you're closing deals, whether you're doing paperwork for the ones that have already purchased from you, time in, you will get more ROI in the end, right? So
yeah, and I think just to kind of add to that point, time in, but also, quality time in, right?
You don't want to just go into work and be frantic and just try to get everything done. In sales, you're your own boss. You're your own franchise, right? And that's the way you need to look at it. Again, regardless of the product you're selling, you as a person are your own business, your own franchise. And everything that you do in the day, the longer you're in it and longer you do this for over the years and so on and so forth, the more efficient you get, right? Or hopefully you get. Because if you're not getting any more efficient after year 5, probably want to switch careers, right?
Yeah.
Because
well, you probably won't make it to year 5 if you're not, right? And that's the harsh reality of sales, right? And real estate sales. If you keep doing the wrong thing, it's not going to take you very far. It's like putting gas in a broken down car. You got to fix a couple things, make sure they're the right things, put that energy into it, and it'll go, right? It'll go as far as you put that gas in. But if you're not fixing the right things and you're just leaving it as it is and driving it to the ground, well, it has an end, right?
Exactly. And I'm going to get back to your car analogy in 1 second, because this is a big turning point too.
Okay.
But I agree with you completely. You need to find those efficiencies in your day-to-day life at work. Yeah, I mean, don't find efficiencies in playing with your kids, please. Find efficiencies in what you do for a living. Because if you don't, your ROI will keep gradually decreasing. Well, it should stay the same. No, it will actually decrease over time, right? Along with that, you need to continually growing through your learning avenue, right? Especially in the housing market, construction technologies, how we do things, the way homes are sold, whether it be online platforms, right? I mean, I have one lady working for me now. She does everything completely virtually, walkthroughs, contract signing, showing homes, everything virtual. She never physically meets that client. But that's the way the world's going. And going back to your car analogy now, cars are actually moving away from gas, right? We're not actually filling them up with gas anymore. We're plugging them in and using electricity. And that's happening in the sales world too, because inherently we had this separation between sales was one entity, right? The door-to-door salesman, right? And then we had this another entity from the corporation side of things, which was marketing, right? They would market it, they would launch out the TV ads, the paper ads, all that good stuff. And then we had sales going door to door with their sales pitch to sell the knives or the vacuums or whatever it may be. But now that salesperson and that marketing person are one and the same. When I first started in this industry, the show home was the place that you drive business from, right? But as we are moving forward and as we see more and more technological advances through social media platforms and virtual tours and self-guided tours and all of this other stuff that's happening, show homes aren't really necessary. And we're actually seeing a drop off in traffic drastically, right? I mean, there's still kind of that niche, right, for where people want to go to write a contract. But generally speaking, the people that come to show homes are recognizing our salespeople on a social media platform first and then searching them out, right? They're not just inherently driving around looking for show home signs anymore, right? Mm-hmm. They're going through their social media feeds to see who's active and who they like the best. Then they're going to the show home where that person's located, right? So the generation of that traffic comes from technology.
Yeah, and before, I mean, honestly, if someone was looking for a house, the only way to get information was to go see a show home. That's not the case anymore. You can do a lot of research prior to that, and that's actually something that I have to give my hats off to Pacesetter is by having a concierge, people are able to go get that information started, right? Learn and kind of narrow down what works for them, what doesn't, and have some meaningful conversations. And then we put you onto an expert, right? To kind of follow through on that next level.
You're right. The concierge is a huge step forward in the right direction that way, right? And I mean, who's to say that we can't see the Tesla model come into homes in the next 5 to 10 years, where you can build your home and colors and options and everything online, press the submit button, they get you back a quote. Okay, you say yay or nay, then they send you the contract and you're done, right? So it's moving forward. And, you know, this isn't a knock against the new home industry, but in a lot of ways, the new home industry in itself, just due to the simple beast of a home, right? You have over 1,000 moving parts and options and stuff like that. It's just hard to control. And then you got all different builders providing all different levels of services. But we are in the Stone Age right now in the new home industry comparative to other industries. And it'll be interesting to see who makes that big first innovative jump forward. We've all done little things, don't get me wrong. Everybody's moving, especially with COVID, everybody's been pushed in that direction, regardless of if they wanted to or not. But it'll be interesting to see kind of who hits that real innovative thing first, right? Kind of the iPhone of the new home industry, right? So we'll just have to wait and see.
How do you talk with your sales team? Is they're all their own little companies working with you? How do you coach them? How do you kind of steer them through this next step here?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question and a difficult one at that. So thanks, Derek. So just to plug myself, because I didn't quite get into this, but I went from 16 years on the field to now being in sales manager for the last year and a half for the biggest builder in Edmonton for Pacesetter. So there's my plug. I told you I was
Where
going to.
you got to do one of these,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
um, but you're right. How we've adapted moving forward, right? I mean, just even at the show home level, hand sanitizer, shields, face masks, all these different things, right? That's more from a safety perspective. But I mean, we were a large company. We have 17 ASMs and equal amount of assistants on our team. So a huge sales team that way. But we used to have sales meetings every 2 weeks, right? Remember going out to get the donuts, bring them in. That was, one thing I had to make sure was there, all that good stuff. And that's evolved from, we gave the sales meeting forum a try when we first got into COVID, when we all couldn't meet in person, right? But what happened was it wasn't productive at all, right? There was people talking over people, you couldn't hear, right? It's how do you, and I think we've all gotten a lot better at these larger meetings now. You can raise your hand and different things like that, right? But it's still, it wasn't as productive as I wanted to see it, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing that I've done is, instead of having a sales meeting every 2 weeks and just bombarding you with a ton of information that you had to remember at that meeting, where tons of it just gets lost, is I'm doing these kind of micro videos, right? 10 to 15 minutes long, even 5, some of them, more consistently, probably 2-3 times a week, getting that information out to there more readily, right? To the team more readily, and making it available to them almost immediately after it becomes available to myself, right? And the feedback from my team on that is fantastic, right? They all really appreciate the amount of information they're getting. It's video cataloged. I always put a little blurb of video notes underneath it, so it's all cataloged. They can save it. They can have a running sheet of updates, all that good stuff. So it's tangible, right? And it's just a better use of time, better ROI for myself, but also for the sales team as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think sales meetings are gone. I honestly dream about the day where I can pull my chair into the middle of that room again and look at my sales team in person, right? And us all be there together, because there's just something different about having that collaborative attitude and mentality working in the same room together, right? But I think sales meetings, for me at least, moving forward, will transform from this very informative, structured, hey, this is what I need you guys to do, this is what you got to remember, this is what's training. I found a different, more effective avenue to get those things out to the team with. I think the sales meeting will evolve into more of a team building, coaching, one-on-one kind of atmosphere moving forward, right? I don't need to take the precious, I do say precious time, because I realize how precious it is now that we've had COVID for over a year now, Jesus. That time that you get face-to-face interaction with someone, I think we've all realized across the world how precious that time is now. And I now see that me barking orders, or me, discipline, or do better at this, or just in information to them, I've got other avenues. I'm going to use this precious few minutes that I have with each one of these individuals FaceTime to really connect with them, right? To really get to know them, and to really either grow my relationship with them, or to push an agenda forward, right? So yeah. I think that's what's changed for me, at least. Over the biggest thing that's changed for me, and the realization of that through this last year of COVID.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it's great that you mentioned that. It's also kind of a parallel back to how your approach with clients, right? Use that time wisely, have meaningful conversation, right? If there's something that's very basic, let's get past that and let's talk about what's meaningful, right? And I think for yourself, being in the industry 20 years, a huge part of your legacy is not just the sales that you've made helping 1,200 families, but also the people you've been able to teach in that time. I'm one of those people. And so one of the biggest things that I took away from you and your approach to things is, a lot of times in sales, a lot of people see it as maybe a cutthroat industry. Everyone's against each other. You're not necessarily a team, even though you should be. And from you, I always took the insights that you gave me about, learn from somebody, see what they can do. See if you can add that to your game, respect what someone else is able to do. And, there's more than one house out there. You don't need to fight over who's going to sell this one or sell that one. Have friendly competition. And so I wanted to ask you, where does that come from?
Well, I grew up with 5 brothers. And I'm a middle child. So,
Okay.
I had to be somewhat
Pragmatic.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I very delicate gloves, making sure to handle the older brother's responsibilities with the younger brother's needs. So I was kind of that go-between, right? Which sales is, because you have a corporation producing a product, you have a client wanting to buy that product, and sales is in the middle trying to bring the two together, right? So that's kind of the way I grew up, right?
Sometimes it's like this.
Yeah. Handcuffed, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be in my childhood or with the corporation. But that's probably where it stems from. I mean, I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I always found working in collaboration with other people was way more beneficial than trying to fight against someone, right? I mean, you work with someone, you're going to get to a solution or a benefit much, much quicker than if you're just butting heads all the time. Usually if you're butting heads, that never really comes to a solution, right? And it's been beneficial. I guess I seen one of the big things that I did when I first got to Fort MacMurray is the relationship with the company and the realtors in Fort MacMurray were just absolutely just broken, right? Just broken right apart, just destroyed. And Fort MacMurray, much like Ontario, is a very realtor-based city, right? So unlike Edmonton, where you have new home sales being run by ASMs or company employees of that builder, the realtors would sit and show homes and sell new homes and everything like that. It was a very realtor-based town, which is great, right? But if you're a new home builder trying to sell houses in a realtor-based town, you can't have a relationship with realtors that's broken, right? So one of the big things that I did first was go out and listen. Again, going back to the act of listening, listen to what the realtors were telling me about why this relationship is broken, right? And then took all of that feedback, made an action plan from it, and created solutions around it, right? And then by the end of my career there, I was working with probably 60 to 65% of the realtors in Fort MacMurray. 50% of my deals every year were realtor based, right? And I wouldn't have had that 50%. Like, think about it, right? 86 deals, that's 43 deals that I wouldn't have had unless I mended that relationship, right?
Yeah,
So
that's incredible. That is,
um,
it's always good, right? And in anything that you're doing to diversify and to never, don't burn a bridge, right? Keep it open, have different streams. And I think that's a great transition actually to my next question is, a lot of people may not know this about you, but not only are you a proud father of 2 and husband as well, and sales manager at a huge company, but you're also a day trader.
Yes. Yeah. I like it started off my more riskier profile that way, so, as far as financing was concerned. But yeah, it's something it stemmed from the family. My uncle's big into trading that way, worked for Canadian Western Bank for a lot of years. But it's something that I just jumped into a couple of years ago, right? The whole cannabis phenomenon was going on, right? And stocks were up and people were saying this, and Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Oh, when it was 1,000, now it's 20,000, right? So I mean, you can't dismiss the fact that you're hearing all these things out there, right? And you're like, hey, I got to get into it. And I started looking into it, and you can do this all from your phone. You mean when I wake up in the morning, I can start trading, right? And
Yeah.
make money while I'm laying in bed, right?
You're just
Uh,
brushing your teeth, making some deals. I love it.
exactly, right? Watching the stock market, doing some trades.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely dabble in that. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means. It's treated me right over the last couple of years. I've been able to get out of markets at the right time and get back into them at the right time, purely out of fluke, I might say. It's simply been, I don't know why. I just had a feeling, a gut feeling, and I trusted it. But yeah, I've done well in that. But I mean, one thing that my uncle told me before I got into it, I asked him, give me some insiders, right? Give me some
Yeah.
insiders. I want to make some big bucks quick. I don't want to have to work for a living, right? It definitely hasn't gotten me there. I still need my daytime job for sure.
Yeah.
But he's trading millions of dollars on a daily, right? And it was so humbling to see what he had to say to me. And that piece of advice was, invest in things that you like, right? Invest in things that you love, right? Which, he looked at me and he said, you like real estate, so invest in REITs, right? Or look at different real estate related product, because if you like what you're doing, you're going to like reading about it. You're going to like finding out more information about it. You're going to really dive into it. And that's the key behind trading, right? Is really enjoying what you do. And I think that's, again, the key to life, right? We keep coming back to this, but it's, if you enjoy what you're doing, if you have a smile on your face because of what you're doing, you're going to be successful at it 9 times out of 10.
And actually, on that note, you had mentioned to me your little some beginner tips. Would you be able to share that with us today?
So with investing, I'm going to take it away now. Investing isn't necessarily the investing that I'm doing in the stock market, but it is. But I'll kind of explain that a little bit more. I started off, fairly young, again, getting into sales and being up in Fort MacMurray during the boom. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There was some great compensation there, right? But I started off kind of my base, right? It's just like the way we build a house. We want to start off with a solid foundation, right? And the way I looked at kind of my life and my goal, my retirement, right? Freedom 45, baby. I'm going for that. But I kind of took it as kind of 3 different silos, right? And those are the silos that I wanted to grow and start putting more and more money into. Now, I started off with silo number 1, which was my safe investments, right? My RRSPs, right? My ERSPs for my kids, right? That was my super secure investments, very little return, if any, probably not even outgrowing the cost of living at this point in time. But it's there, right? It's a super safe base to be able to build the rest of my investments upon. Then I kind of moved over to silo number 2 after I built silo number 1 to a certain width that way, or a certain volume, right? Moved over to silo number 2, which is a little bit kind of that moderate risk, right? We all know, real estate is a very safe investment, as told. Alberta's a little less safe. So you got to get in and get out at the right time again.
Yeah.
So I invested in a few real estate adventures that way, did some flips, got a few rental properties, stuff like that, right? So I grew, again, silo number 2 to where I thought was a nice, secure, stable base for me, right? That's kind of your framing, right? And then I get over to the lavish finishes on the inside of the house, right? Your tile, your big fridges, all that good stuff, the high risk investments. And that was about 2 years ago when I hit that point, right? And that's when I got into the stock market, right? When I got into number 3, the number one thing I said to myself is, the money that I'm getting into number 3 with, I've got to be able to make sure that I can lose every single dime that I have going into number 3. And me and my family are still going to be safe, secure, and our lifestyle is not going to change because I lose this money, right? I got into it with a very clear expectation that every single cent that I'm putting into this silo can be lost at any given time. And me and my family, through silo 1 and 2, are still going to move forward. We're still going to have the same quality of life. I'm still going to be able to take my girls to Disneyland, right? Dove into it. and so far successful. I've about doubled money in that silo in the matter of 2 years. But again, don't get me wrong, I took a little bit out, put it back in silo 1 and 2. But, again, that money, if I lost it today, I am secure with my life moving forward. But it was a good strategy. It worked for me in my life. It allowed me to get to the position that I am currently, and to take inherently a little bit more risk with these investments, but still making sure that my retirement is still going to be there for me in the end, right? So
Definitely. And I think, like, to that point, I mean, that takes a lot of discipline, right? Because it's so hard not to react when you lose money, right? Like when you think about when you go to a casino,
yeah,
it's so hard after you put, $20 or $50 to say, I'm leaving with 10 instead of 30. Right. And I think that's great advice that you give. Discipline is huge. The other thing is diversification, right? I've always looked at, especially when it comes to your income, you want to have your income streams like a chair. And when I say a chair, have four legs, multiple different streams, so that, if one maybe isn't working out, you're still stable in there, right? Whereas if you have just one primary income stream, and I know, this isn't easy for everyone to get to, but it's just an example, right?
right.
But if you only have one income stream and something happens to it, you know, where are you then, right? That's a difficult thing to overcome and to start, but I think it's something interesting for, someone to keep in mind, right?
I agree with you 100%. And I only got two last comments just on this topic. The diversification and bringing the emotion into it, right? Again, with that silo number 3, if you get into it with a clear mind that no matter what happens to this money, you're going to walk away and you're going to be okay, you have less emotion in you making those decisions, right? And when you take the emotion out of those decisions and your fear out of making those decisions, I feel, again, just my opinion, that you're making a lot better decision, right? Because you're making it clear based on the facts. You're not making it clear based on fear, right? So I think that's such a huge thing, and you're 100% right. On the four legs, I think it's easier these days for people to have multiple businesses set up. Like for me, for example, right? I've got my main job, right? Sales manager, Pacesetter Homes. Got the investment thing going, like we talked about. I dabble in the morning when I'm still laying in bed. I've got T3 Contracting, which is a contracting company that's basically working without any involvement on my own, right? I don't have a fourth leg, but those are bigger things, right? I think people really thought about what they, again, love to do. I'm going to come up with that. Anybody can have their own commerce. Anybody can create their own product. Anybody can sell it now worldwide, right? I mean, look at Amazon, right? You can make things out of your house and sell it to people in India or China or England or wherever it may be. I mean, anybody can have multiple streams of revenue now at the touch of a button, right? Come up with a great app idea, start developing it, look into coding, right? There's how many coding classes out there. You can put that app, right? A simple app out on the app store, and that's self-generating revenue now. Now you're just getting the money back in until it's no longer needed or outdated that way. But there's things that people can do now, that those revenue streams are so easy to get. And you don't have to look at big ticket items. If you like making quilts for a living, make a quilt and throw it up on Amazon, right? Like it's as simple as that, right? With how small the world is now, there's nothing that you can't do that won't succeed, right? As long as you approach it right? So, just a million different facets out there. Again, it all falls back to working hard and just coming up with an idea, right? Doesn't have to even be unique, right? There's billions of people in this world. Not one person can service all those needs. right? So
Exactly. I mean, if you put the equation of hard work and working smart together, like you said, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get somewhere, right? And I think maybe adding to that equation, if you put patience into there, you're patient, you work hard and you try to work smart or you try to adapt. I can't see why that you can't get somewhere and, take that step up, up, up and, climb that ladder, right?
exactly. Yeah. No, the sky's the limit. All you need to do is put your mind to it, right? So
Totally. In times like this, whether it's the financial crisis or what have you, COVID, they're, for lack of a better word, they are disruptive times. And in these
yes.
disruptive times, we see a lot of innovation, adaptation, and I was curious to hear from you what you see coming up in our future, whether that's in the next 5 years or 10 years. And this doesn't have to be just about real estate, but just, how do you see our world changing? We're already seeing some of those changes manifest. What do you see as well?
Yeah, so I think so much is going to come out of this pandemic, right? I think so much has, like you mentioned as well.
This will define the 2020s,
It'll
right?
define our generation, and every generation that's lived through this, it'll define, right? It's going to define the next 80 years. No, I mean we're seeing a lot of things going virtual, right? We're seeing how, I think a big fear in the workplace market prior to this was what kind of efficiency are you going to get out of your employees if they're working from home, right? And since it became necessary, I think companies were overwhelmingly surprised that the efficiency of their employees actually went up, right? People are working harder, they're working longer hours, right? They're doing more things. Now, there's another side of things, which what does that do to your mental state? But hey, you know what? Commutes are shorter, right? My commute is literally 2 minutes down
Yep.
the stairs, right? So
Yeah.
I think I'll direct my opinion of what will happen or maybe happen or some outlandish ideas
Yeah.
that may happen in the future towards my industry again, because I love it and this is what I do, right? But it could change homes, right? Like it could change your house. You may need larger square footages, right? One idea that, but if we don't need to drive everywhere or as far, if we don't need to go downtown, right? What does that do to the office space downtown? What does that do to, again, the driving? What you mentioned this to me before. What do you do with all the empty parking lots downtown now, right? Do those turn into high-rise residentials, right? But what do you do to suburbs too? If you're not driving as much, do people actually need their own vehicle anymore? I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm a big camper, right? So I still need that camping vehicle. But do we now eliminate streets within a certain subdivision, right? Say, where I live in Cybecker, maybe we eliminate streets and there's just a common kind of train or vehicle or something along a rail that brings you to a common parking garage that you then rent a car from that common parking garage to take you to that grocery store or downtown to the office when you need to go once every 2 weeks or once a month that way, right? But you don't need that facility that or even that garage space anymore, right? You don't need that garage. Maybe that turns into your office now, right? So there's so many things that could stem from that to create efficiency, to create I think one of the big things too that a lot of people are skipping over through this whole pandemic is environmental awareness as well, right? That first 3 months when COVID hit, March, April, and May,
clear skies. There's dolphins back in what's it called in Italy? Venice.
right.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how clear the waters were in Venice and how much the air quality actually changed during that 3 months from air traffic not going and so on and so forth, right? I mean, if that doesn't give you a little chills up your spine to say how much things can change, how drastically they can change in 3 months from shutting down the world, why not everybody on this planet isn't thinking, get a little bit better here, right? Even if they are little things, right?
Yeah.
So It was heartwarming for myself. I'm going to be doing a lot more gardening this year and
Yeah.
driving the car less already, working from home, and trying to teach my girls about recycling and reusing, composting, different things like that. Right. So I know it's definitely opened my eyes a lot more than they were. Right. And I hope it does it for everybody to a certain degree. Right. So.
Yeah, even for me, like, um I don't know if you've they've gone to your neighborhood yet, but kind of what the city of Edmonton has done with their, new program with your food scraps and recycling, trying to incentivize people to, be a little bit more conscious about, their waste, I think is great. And, on another note, if we think about our neighborhoods and the places where we live, how different does it look when you don't need all these roads that take up, a significant portion of where we live? What does a house start to look
Hmm.
like, or the outside appearance of your community start to look like when there isn't that much of a need for these, big wide roads that we've been accustomed to for, hundreds of years now?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I agree with you completely. It's almost a foreign thought or a futuristic thought, but
Yeah.
I think we're actually there where we can start like actually saying this could be a valuable idea or a valid idea, I should say. No, it's very interesting. And like you were mentioning about being the disruptor, I think
Mhm.
this disruptor has the ability to change the world in that way, right? It'll be different.
I don't know, maybe since this pandemic, I've had a lot of time to reflect on different things. And I think part of that has made me even more open-minded to change, right? A lot of times, people hear change and they're kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, right? But I think having gone through what we've gone through and still still fighting through, um, being open-minded, I think, is such a great avenue for, like we said, innovation, adaptation, just in general, taking care of each other and taking care of our planet and going forward that way, right?
You've got to be willing to change, right? The world changes on a daily basis. If you're not willing to change, then you're really not living in the real world, right? So
Yeah.
it's just an absolute must, right? I think that's one of the biggest. I'm going to circle it all back to sales now. One of the biggest things that if a salesperson isn't willing to change, that'll be the death of them. They could be the golden child of their time in sales, whatever they're selling, and have moved through this fantastic career for the last 5 or 10 years. But if they don't continue to learn and grow and change, they're going to die, right? They're simply going to die. Something is going to move past them, and that next person is going to take over, right? That started when that change occurred.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to change. I couldn't agree with you more, Derek.
Totally, totally. And I appreciate that thought. I mean, we see it all the time in our world. We see a massive company, a historical company in a lot of ways, like Disney, right? Disney has evolved and changed and added so much to it, from being, a theme park, just doing some animation, to acquiring Pixar and acquiring different intellectual properties. And now they're doing a streaming service. And really,
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to read the Bob Iger book, and it was really interesting to me to see how much they were thinking about where they are today 10 years ago, right?
Right.
So what we're
Right.
thinking about right now is probably what we might be seeing 10 years from now, right? So that's kind of a
Exactly.
neat thing to think about, right?
Yeah. No, that forward thinking, right?
Mhm.
And uh, I mean, a direct comparison to that, you can see Disney thrive and grow and be successful through the changes that they've implemented. But on the flip side, you look at a company like Sears, right, that kept their very retail-based model. They kept sending out the wish look. Don't get me wrong, nobody. I'm not knocking the wish book. I loved it. It was something I look forward to every year. But especially as a kid, right? I got to pick up my toys for Christmas. Um, but they didn't change, right? They didn't. increase. I mean, yeah, sure, they got their websites and stuff like that. But they didn't change enough. They didn't move forward enough, right? Um, and they still, wanted to keep their roots in that very retail-based business, on-site, in strip malls business, right? And I think that's where we're seeing the downfall of it, right? I know big malls are still on the go right now, and people still like to gather in big malls, but we are seeing the traditional retail space for any given store shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, right, to smaller and smaller retail
Yeah.
spaces. So,
Well,
uh,
the way I like to think about it is a mall isn't going to disappear, but maybe what a mall is to the meaning of a mall might change, right? Like
right,
a mall might be less about your bricks and mortar shop to go and buy something. It might be more of like an experience, right? Just like how, yes, pandemic, it's really sad to see some restaurants go out of business and it's not going to work, but that doesn't mean that the restaurant model is gone. People still crave that experience that you get from a restaurant, that the service aspect of it and the atmosphere and all those things. And maybe those concepts become stronger in our hopefully soon post-COVID world, right? Someone's more interested about the experience that they have rather than, okay, I just need to go pick up a shirt, right? Okay, I can do my online shopping and get my shirt from a local business, but I'm going to this mall for an experience, right?
I don't think you could have said it any better. I think that's really the drive moving forward with the way the world currently is. No matter what we're selling, it's the experience that the client is getting that's selling that product now, right? And I think that's why it's so fundamental and key for the salesperson to be happy or upbeat, asking the right questions. It's that experience that it furthers that conversation, right? And I mean, again, I keep going back to Apple, right? Because I just feel they really changed something in the last 30 years for us, right? 20 years, I should say. But they came out with that iPhone. What did it give you? It gave you a much easier experience to navigate technology, right? Again, it's through that experience that the client's feeling. They dumbed down technology so that anybody could use it. It's not rocket science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, you had to download it, you had to put in your password, you had to,
You got to have
you
your
had all these.
degree, you got to have your class to know how to do it.
Exactly, right. And I remember one of my first computers that I had, and it's like, holy cow, how do I get this program on this thing, right? Apple, well, you open it up, App Store. Oh, there's a store you go to. Okay, yes, I want this one. One click. Okay. Oh my God, it's downloading already. Oh, what do you mean? I don't have to enter any. You click on the icon and you're good to go. You're using it right within 5 minutes. So it's that experience that Apple gave to technology for everybody to use it on an easier platform that made them so successful, right? They dumbed down technology for everybody to use, right? So,
And Apple, if you're listening to this, sponsor us. My information will be in the details. Send me whatever you want.
there you go, right? Remember, Derek told you I had two little girls. They love iPads.
Yeah, sounds good. Just so everyone knows, this is not sponsored by Apple. We're just fans of what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tyler, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today to, go through the variety of topics that we did today, whether it was, talking about how real estate is evolving to, mentoring your sales team and even investing and seeing how our world is going to look post-COVID. So I can't thank you enough. This has been just a great conversation, and I'm excited to share this with our audience.
Yeah, no, thanks, Derek. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time. Cheers to that. Single malt Scotch, by the way. So
this is an empty glass because I was having such a great conversation. I finished already.
There you go.
But this is the Caribbean special. This is Captain Morgan spiced rum and Pepsi.
There you go.
Supposed to be Coke, but I'm a Pepsi guy, so what can I say?
It's okay. We won't blame you for everything. Not everybody's perfect. Especially in this COVID world, it's so hard to get together and have conversations like this now. So I really appreciate the time on you just letting me have this conversation with you, Derek. It's always a pleasure. And it's great anytime.
Cheers to that.